Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Office Hours with the Professor. As always, I'm your host, William the Professor Collis, and I can't wait to talk about another story this week. This week, I picked OG Esports teaming up with another pro team, LDN UTD, to compete in VALORANT as a new hybrid pro team or joint venture pro team or whatever you want to call it, OG LDN UTD. And what I specifically want to talk about this week is not this hybridization or this joint venture, or again, whatever you want to call this, two pro teams coming together to operate a roster together. I want to talk about this trend in general because this has been a trend in the industry of pro teams joining up to operate a competitive roster together. And I want to ask, does the joint venture team make sense? And the easiest way to answer this in the abstract is to look at the benefits and look at the costs. So what are the benefits of doing a joint venture pro team? Well, let's start. An easy one is it's less expensive. Assuming it's a 50-50 joint venture, you have to pay half as much. That's great. Pro teams are expensive to run, and suddenly this thing is 50% what it should cost you to compete in the game. So that's a great benefit. Another benefit is potentially shared expertise. You, the other pro team, might know things about the game or the market that you don't know, and you can learn from them. And then a third benefit is shared fans, right? You might be able to share some of your engaged community, and conversely, you might be able to receive new fans and new followers back, right? So I think those are the three principal benefits that you get from performing a JV team. Now, what about the costs or the downsides of doing it? Well, the first is also a pretty big one. It's you actually get half the returns, right? Assuming this is a 50-50 joint venture, again, you would get half as much revenue or, earnouts or whatever you're getting from this pro team as a result of it, right? So yes, the costs are lower, but also the potential payout from operating the team is lower. And crucially, this doesn't change the economics of then the venture itself, right? It's not like suddenly it's half the cost, so something that was unprofitable before becomes profitable. It's half the revenues too, right? So if it was a bad business decision to enter that game before in that roster, it's still a bad business decision theoretically to enter that game with that roster afterwards. That's one downside. Another downside is significant operational complexity, right? It's hard to do anything with a partner, let alone to operate something as complicated as a pro roster. And, in that high pressure stakes, having to collaborate, it can be a real challenge. And the last downside, and it's a small, but it has to be said, is the names end up too complex, right? Because neither partner wants to give up on the branding. You end up with real mouthful names like OG LDN UTD, which I don't think any fan is screaming in the stadiums, right? Go OG LDN UTD. Like, it doesn't work. So those are the benefits. Those are the downsides to doing these joint venture teams. So where does the professor come out? What does he think about them abstractly? And the answer is, I don't really like these things. And the reason why I don't like these things is because I don't think they are done for the benefits that really make sense today, or at least typically. They're not really done to share expertise and to share fans. In that case, it can be really a mutual or a symbiotic relationship. I think these joint venture teams today are done more because they're about de-risking a business opportunity, right? They're about lowering the cost. And if that's the case, I think there are better avenues for teams to de-risk business opportunities. Classic one might be raise some more venture capital. That's sort of de-risking it, right? Like you're getting money from somebody else to invest in a speculative venture. And the complexity that comes with these operations, I think really, if your goal is to enter a game more cheaply, I think there are better ways to do it. And I think, a pure de-risk play, it might sound good up front, but there's a lot of complexity on the back end that ultimately makes these things not worth it. So my review of this is a D. I really don't like these things. Maybe I'll see a joint venture or a hybrid roster relationship that I like in future, but I typically don't like them. And so that's the professor giving out a low grade. Sorry, guys. I guess the grade inflation era of office hours is over. But thank you so much for joining me. As always, it's an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you next week.